Cool. Well, hey, Gabe, I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder of Safeopedia.
And this is Gabe Encarnacion, president of BBL Safety. It's kind of funny to introduce ourselves to each
Yeah,
other like this.
I know, I know. We're assuming somebody's going to watch or listen to it. So,
I think so. Our moms will.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today. We wanted to do a year two in review and talk a little about what we have planned for 2025. And it might be hard for some people who know us to believe that we're already planning ahead for next year, but it's true.
it's coming. I know it's kind of wild. Before we started recording, Scott, you and I were talking about how long we've been doing this. It's 2 years now. This is just kind of crazy. And I feel like there's been this evolution, especially over the last year, where we started bringing other people into the Safeonomics space. Initially, we were just talking about the intersection between business and safety and how there's how do you build a business case for safety, and then what will a business grow in, or how will they benefit by having a stronger safety mindset or culture within the organization? And then this last year, we started to hear from a lot more people about how they grew personally and the benefits that they've been able to provide for their organizations by being an engaged and educated safety professional.
Yeah, and I think that gonna lend itself, I think, to what we're going to be talking about or focusing on in 2025. But yeah, it was interesting, for us in our backgrounds to talk about the economics of safety and bring people in to help people understand, budgeting and return on investment and the business language of safety. But definitely I think this past year where we were talking about how to invest in yourself was really insightful. We had some really amazing guests. We started with back-to-back Allisons. We had Allison Hemmings and then Allison Short. And I think they both did a really great job of bringing those inspirational stories to people. Then we had, Sarah and Jonathan, a little more technical background, hopefully expanding people's understanding of different avenues you could take, once you get into safety.
Yeah, and that was so neat to be able to hear from people's stories where it wasn't just us looking at, as you said, almost like the academic side of business, almost like it's, an economics textbook or something like that. It's great. It's good to establish that terminology,
Yeah.
but to actually hear how it works in real life from
Yeah.
people, I think that was insightful for me
Yeah.
because I might have some ideas of how do you pitch safety to the C-suite, or how do you talk to your line workers about safety management and safety protocols. But to actually hear from people that are doing it, I had some things that I kind of had to rethink of how do I approach this, or what do people actually need in order to get better as safety professionals.
Yeah. And I was gonna say we talked to Leslie is awesome, or Leslie Montgomery
She
next.
is awesome.
She is awesome, and so much so that we're going to be within the Safeopedia community, which again I think we'll talk a little bit more about as we get going. But she's going to be doing a bit of a series,
Hmm.
within the workshop, mental health kind of first aid, and how to be on the lookout, for people who are in need. And similarly, we had Pat Robinson next after Leslie, and we've been doing a workshop. It's sort of let's say a workshop, but auditing a course that he's put together. So he's asked, again, members of our community to kind of audit the course, go through it and give their feedback to make it as relevant and effective as possible. So definitely some interesting initiatives have come out of the Safeonomics season two. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is one of this season was really fun because I felt like I was learning so much from our guests that um, it was two things. First, I would have to remind myself that I was actually hosting and not just listening to this amazing content. The other part too is that even though, and I'll have to look back at the length of time of our episodes, call it 45 minutes on average, we would touch on so many things that I just thought we need to dig more into this. And we've talked to a couple of our guests that we know we want to have back on the show for follow up. But this is where some of those bigger conversations begin.
Yeah,
I think the point of the Safeonomics podcast was never to actually solve the problem in 45 minutes. I don't think that's even possible. And half the time, I feel like we're walking away with more questions than answers at the end.
yeah,
But it's really exciting to see how some of those conversations have grown. As you said, those initiatives that are starting, those classes, those even text threads that are starting,
yeah,
um, that are both sometimes it's on a messaging app, and other times it's starting to grow in that community. And I think that's really where it's built some curiosity for you and me
yeah,
in seeing, well, how do we start to dig deeper into those conversations?
yeah. And I was gonna, again, reflecting just after we spoke, sorry, to Pat, we talked to Brandy uh, Catterhagen, and I'm gonna come back to Brandy
Hmm.
in a minute, but we also then we had Dr. Megan Trantner on the podcast, and again, similar to your comments, we've been working with her, helping her launch her course. She's got a course, and
Yeah.
now off that course, she's launching a coaching cohort. So it isn't one-on-one, but it's a cohort model to bring people together. And I mean, she's had four of the top, global jobs there are to have, and now she's looking to give back,
Hmm.
to pay it forward a little bit to others who wanna participate. Like her course, I've been taking the course, but she's charging $149. Like she's one of the top global EHS leaders, and she's breaking her knowledge down, making it accessible, investing a ton of time and energy to put it together and share that with the community. So definitely stay tuned, because we'll be talking a little bit more about that throughout the year as we get kind of that up and running with her. And then we had the misfortune of talking to Jamie Young after Megan. I should lump myself in there, because really you hosted that episode,
We're
and
all in on it.
yeah, and it was an opportunity for Jamie and I to talk a little bit about Safety Connect, and what we had planned for Safety Connect 2024 back in October.
Yeah, what was so interesting about even talking with Megan, and then gosh, even looking at Safety Connect, there were so many kind of full circle moments that I saw for our guests, and then even for us, looking at Safety Connect, and that's really where a lot of this got started. Uh, for I think that was kind of the catalyst for so many of these connections. But what I really enjoyed with our guests was for them to go take us on that journey of how they grew in their careers. And that was one of the biggest themes that we had in season two was how do you build that engagement? It's not just education, it's not just, getting yourself hyped up, but how do you really lock in on the safety field in a way that you are gaining so much from meeting with other people, and then it makes you want to give back. So what was neat to hear from a lot of our guests was that kind of realization as they were going through their process and saying like, wow, my career was actually pretty wild, but here's where I came out of it, and here's what I've become through this sometimes difficult journey. And I think that there is an actual business effect in that. If you have higher engaged employees, the level of production that they'll have, the way that they're retained, the way that they will inspire others, I think is really, really big. And I hate to break it down to dollars and cents, but there is an actual profitability that generates out of that as you have people that are more engaged. So definitely having a safer work environment is big. Um, and I think that it comes down to the people. that are there.
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting to explore in this last season, is that we had so many more of these people that are in the field, that are adjacent to it, and through their knowledge and expertise and connection, I think that you can see a lot of people really growing and doing better through that.
Yeah, that's that's a great segue. It's almost like we rehearsed or something.
It's like we planned it.
But
Son of a gun.
because I was gonna circle back to, the episode we had with Brandy, and then Dorothy and Sarah Bogner. And I think that those were like some of the episodes were inspiring, right? Like you said, there's this arc of a person's career and the ups and downs and how they got through it. And I think with what I was really happy about with Brandy and Dorothy, and Sarah at the end of the season, was just some really amazing practical sort of
Yeah.
pragmatic advice. Like that's, I think, to your point about we only have so much time to talk to the guests and find those nuggets of insight and knowledge, but they were able to really provide really pragmatic, practical advice that I think provided immediate takeaways, which was really what you hope to accomplish in any podcast episode. So special shout out to those three.
Yeah, definitely. And I loved that in those episodes. I'm glad you brought them up too, because there were things where it's just after listening to the episode, you can jump into it. And you can take the pieces that people are talking about, and you can actually apply them immediately in your day and start doing those sort of things. Uh, and again, I'm teeing this up for our 2025. But what I found myself doing was that it was two things. First, I would get excited about trying out these new tips and tricks that I would hear from our guests, and and then the second part was that I would be excited to find out how other people are doing it, and see like, okay, well, here's what I'm doing, to Sarah's point about planning out my day. How do I keep my list? How do I reflect on what's been done? And then I'd like to find out from others, how are you doing this? Because as Sarah had said, this is the system that worked for her. She would give a process of how to determine that, but ultimately how you decide to, in this case, plan out your day, um, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And so same thing with Megan Tranter, where she's giving this framework of how do you determine, your brilliant future and your career, but the nuts and bolts of it are specific to you.
Right.
So that's where I really want to dig into those types of conversations in 2025 and seeing how others are doing these sort of things. How are they working together as a community to what are they gaining from it? And then what are they able to give back?
Yeah. And I think that's the if it isn't obvious yet, that's going to be the focus in 2025. Totally, Gabe's insight, I think, in reflecting on our previous 2 years. But what was your saying or your analogy that you shared with me earlier?
Oh yeah, it was something that I had heard at a class where I guess it's an old proverb that says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what pretty much every safety professional that I've talked with, that's what drives them. That's what makes them want to do this job. Moving fast, as again, Megan had mentioned that if you're in a large organization, trying to get things moving fast is almost impossible. You have to take those small wins, but we look for significance. And so
Yeah.
I think that's only done when we can work with others in that field.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm as we build the Safepedia community, with the founding members like yourself, it's just amazing to hear the stories, of the assistance, the support, the encouragement that people find within the community. One of my favorite stories was from Keone Valdez, who attended, a Safety Connect 2020, but was contemplating leaving the safety profession. And
Mm.
I didn't hear about this, until I think a few years later. But he connected with someone at Safety Connect, became a bit of a mentor. He shares the story. We asked him to speak this last year, so
Mm.
we have that recorded. You can check that out. But talks about how this individual helped him, kind of reframe his life, his career, and how he couldn't be happier that he stuck with safety, and as again, having a very fulfilling career, thanks to the support that he got from making those connections at Safety Connect.
Yeah, and what's funny about that too, and I'd heard that story at the same time that you had found out about it as well. And it's funny, that's not unique. I have found other people, shout out to my buddy Josh Russell, that I remember having a conversation with him several years ago, and he was same thing, on the verge of leaving the safety profession. And it was through contact with other people and other safety professionals who had either inspired him or challenged him or had gone through the same thing that he had gone through or that he was going through at the time, and said, "Hey, here's how I went through that process. Here's why I stuck with it, or here's why I decided to pivot a little bit." It really helped to build that clarity of mind for that
Right.
person. Um, and in both these cases, they've stuck with the profession and are just absolute rock stars in it. Um,
Absolutely.
so I feel like that's where, even selfishly, to satisfy my own curiosity, I would love to hear stories like that and hear from people like that. And it doesn't occur in a vacuum and it doesn't occur individually. I feel like having these kinds of discussions, almost like, as Jonathan Smith had told me in the past, like a campfire talk sort of
Right.
thing. I think there's so many benefits that can come out of that. And that's what I would love to see happen in with Safeonomics in 2025, is that, how are we helping each other go farther?
Yeah.
Not just in our careers and in our businesses, but in the profession overall. Are we
Yeah.
giving back to other people? I
Right.
think it's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah. A couple thoughts. Where just there's the from a Safeonomics tie-in. There is something called Metcalf theory, right? Where it's the value of the network is based on the number of nodes,
Yep.
and similarly in your professional career, um, and I think it was. If anybody has ever listened to Grant Cardone, I think he said it's not about how many people it's how many people know you.
Mm,
Because obviously it's one thing to be able to reach out and ask for assistance or ask for help, but it's a whole different story when people know who Gabe Encarnacion is, and that they, if an opportunity comes up, a question comes up, or whatever, that they know that Gabe's the guy to go to for that
mm,
kind of information. So I think that it'd be really fun to explore that and hear those stories, and get some advice on where to connect, how to connect. I think that for us, and for a lot of other people too, coming into safety from other professions,
mm,
there are CEO forums or COO forums or CFO forums or tech, forums, but that they exist in addition to the professional associations, but they're really more geared towards networking and connecting and peer support, and there isn't a lot. I haven't seen, in safety, there's a lot of maybe local safety associations or committees to be part of, but there isn't a national network of peer support groups
mm.
for safety professionals. So really, really excited to explore that concept, that idea, and obviously support people with the Safepedia community.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned that. It kind of gave me a flashback of a conversation I had years ago when I first got into safety. And I'd asked several people this, and it was basically, "Hey, I'm new here. What's something that I need to know that I won't find in the manual?" Basically, okay, the people I was asking this to had been in the safety profession for 5, 10, 15, sometimes even 25 years. And to be able to ask them these things, I was essentially asking them, tell me something that you've learned through the school of hard knocks in being in this profession that I could actually pick up now without having to go through all those other things. Tell me something that's special and unique. What do you love about this profession? What's something that I could learn? And the range of answers I got was phenomenal. It was really great, and I took a lot of them to heart. But what I took away the most was that there's a lot in safety that you can't just pick up in a manual. You can't just Google it. Maybe eventually we will, but at this stage, there's so much communication with people, there's so much interaction with people that is not talked about, even if you're in a university setting and or even like a postgraduate setting with safety. Uh, and I think that that kind of information is best relayed from the people that are in the field to the ones that are just starting up in it.
Right.
And if we talk about how there's transfer of knowledge and business continuity that has to happen, this is where it begins. Is when you have a community of people that are willing to share what they've learned to others. Even from a business standpoint, you're talking about retention of knowledge and growth on the things that have already been built and learned by your existing team. I think that's going to be really important going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Excited to pretty excited to be wrapping up year two.
That's crazy.
It's hard to believe that we've been doing it for a couple years now, but really excited, looking forward into 2025 and and really drilling into that concept, that idea of community.
Yep. And I think it's a perfect tee up for the Safeopedia community that is building and it's growing. And yeah, I'm jumping in there, interacting, and it's really neat to see what people are coming up with and how there really is a lot of help that's being offered, which is pretty exciting. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, just a small story from my perspective was we got the platform up and running. We recruited, invited 35 founding members to come in and kind of help shape the community, make sure the foundation was set properly. And I'll always remember when we were gonna, like, let's do our core value exercise, and here's some ideas that we've got, right? And the founding members were like, hey, this is our community. Just park your idea for a second. We're gonna dive in. We know what we want the core values to be,
Mm,
and just for the community to take ownership, direct, drive those core values and set the tone for the community it was a amazing experience. Awesome to see that community again coming together to support each other and to support future members of the community too. So
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of giving that's going on in that community,
yeah,
which is super cool. And I feel like, even just as an aside, and I'll have to jot down this note so that we can talk about this at a future episode. But we talk about how even from a multi-generational standpoint in a workplace, you have people that are looking at a retirement age, and then others that are coming up, they're just starting their careers. So even as a business leader, how do you look at that transfer of knowledge? And you want to make sure that the people that are moving on or at the tail end of their careers, you don't lose that experience. And then the ones that are gung ho and ready to light the world on fire, hopefully safely, not literally, but do a really good job with that they're doing it properly and doing it well. I feel like this is where community comes into play, where you have that. It doesn't even have to be a formal mentoring that happens. Hopefully, it builds to that, but even being able to take the knowledge of one set of workers and transfer it to another, or to offer support through that, I think is actually really, really important. And I've seen it happen in other industries. I think it can totally happen in safety, and that will continue to make the profession so much better.
yeah, couldn't have said it better.
So here's the 2025. Let's go.
Yeah, so we'll say happy holidays to everybody and happy New Year's, and we'll see y'all back here on Safeonomics 2025.
And thank you for listening for the last couple of years.
Yeah,
It's
thanks so
crazy.
much.